to sell women's clothes, they must think we're fools. Go woke, go broke, that's what they say. Try selling folks what they don't want, you'll find there's hell to pay. If you ask me, you should keep your politics to yourself, and we'll both have a better day. Greedy banks lecturing me about DEI, are they for real? And some whack jobs named Ben and Jerry want me to boycott Israel. It's enough to make you reach for a beer, but Bud's woke too. Next they'll call it the Queen of Beers, guess this Bud ain't for you. Go woke, go broke, different company, different day. Sell liberal insanity and you'll see that business plan don't pay. Best Foods don't want your opinions on Trump, just want mayo for my sandwich, that okay. Why, oh, why do brands insist on committing suicide? Cracker Barrel, you could left me on the logo and just let it ride. Hey, Wall Street, God, politics, and sex ain't your business. So do me a favor and stay the heck out of mine. Go woke, go broke, that's what they say. Had enough of your brand sermonizing like yesterday. Stick to selling your screens, beans, and widget machines. Oh, and did I mention Sydney? Sweeney has great jeans.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic Monday morning. It's a little chilly out there. If you ask me, I'm not a big fan of cool weather, as you probably know. And it's just another reminder that fall is coming, right? I'm not going to get into how I do not like fall or winter weather. Not even going to talk about it. Good morning, Karen. Of course, I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. And it's been a long weekend. It's been a really long weekend. And I had my Amateur Hockey Hall of Fame dinner on Saturday, which was a lot of fun. Good catching up with people I haven't seen in a long time. And a lot of new faces, a lot of familiar faces. Always nice time to chat with people. If you haven't been before, make sure you check out the St. Louis Amateur Hockey Hall of Fame. They have a golf tournament at the end of May, as well as the dinner in August. So check them out. Other than that, I have a family member who was in the hospital till really late last night. I'm a little bit tired this morning, running a few minutes behind. And Karen, I hope you also are having a good morning. Lots to talk about today. I love that little video from Cracker Barrel, but I promise you, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for playing that. Facebook has been coming at me hard, really hard, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't see anything wrong with playing that. It's not some big artist that made that video or that song, but either way, they will send me several notices today over playing that the other day. I didn't even know there were 252 countries, but I was banned in 252 different countries on, I think that was Friday. And then I appealed it, and then they reversed their decision. But it was too late. It was too late by then, because most people that watch the show, come in right in the middle of the show or towards the end, and when they're blocked. And most people watch the show on Facebook. I prefer people to watch it on YouTube or X, but I think most people watch it on Facebook, and Facebook is the channel that messes with me the most, surprisingly enough. Good morning, Sherry. Hopefully you're having a good morning. I'm not sure if I'm having a good morning yet or not. I'm having some kind of issues. I've had stalkers in the past, and it's not unusual. If you're a female, you've probably had a stalker in the past. I've had a couple of pretty crazy people, outside of the fact that I had one guy years ago, and many years ago, and I knew that it was this guy followed me. That's why you got to be careful on the highways. This guy followed me home from the highway. I saw this guy and I actually looked at him because I thought he was somebody I knew because he was driving side by side. Then I'm like, oh, I don't know that person. Well, they followed me all the way home and then they kept coming back to my house. And, and I would see them drive by. My son, I thought they were maybe coming into the house because I could tell things were moved or missing. And then one day, I was at work, my son, a teenager at the time, got off the school bus and he said, "Hey, there's a red truck in the driveway. Isn't that person you told me to be careful and, watch out for?" Sure enough, they were in my house. The police kept saying, "Well, we can't catch them. They're not there." I'm like, "Sit in front of my house every day at 5:30 p.m. because they drive by." The next day, the police sat near my house and sure enough, they caught the person. Never saw them again. Still to this day, I have no idea who that person is. Things were different back then. Police, who were my friends, made sure that this person never came back, but they would never give me this person's name. So they're still out there. Now I've got somebody else who's causing some issues. So if you're that person and you're listening to the show, please know that if you come to my home, you're going to run into a shock and awe campaign unlike anything you have ever seen before. So please don't do that. Please don't take it that far. It's just not worth it. Somebody tried to break into our cabin one night. My mom and I were there. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I heard this big boom, and I'm like, it woke me up. I sat straight up, and I'll tell you, it is a miracle that whoever this person was didn't get murdered because all I would have had to have done was fire a shot straight through the door, and I can guarantee you they were standing on the other side of it. We got up, looked around. My mother and I were both there. This person tried to take the door off of the frame on the front door. They were taking the screws out of the back door. They were doing anything they could to get in. And I can guarantee you, had they been successful at coming in, it would have been a very bad situation. Maybe for them, maybe for us. Hard to say. But if we, of course, did contact police, the police were so worried, in fact, that they waited for my mom and I to pack up and they escorted us out and they told us, don't come back unless you're prepared to deal with this person because whoever they are, they're probably going to be back. And so we sold the cabin, but here in my home now, I moved about as far away as I could get. I will not put up with any nonsense, and I'm not going to be chased out of my home by crazies. So take that as a warning. If you are that person, I know who you are. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Phyllis. Good to see you. Hope you guys again had a good weekend. I've been dealing with this particular issue this morning, so I've been running a few minutes late. So I want to make sure I make it noted. Don't come to my house. That's a very bad idea. But lots of things to talk about here, unless you're invited, of course. If I invite you, come on over. But don't surprise me. It won't end well. It will not end well. And lots to talk about today. The FBI coming into St. Louis City, and that's not temporary, that's permanent. As we know, they're flooding the St. Louis area. And we're going to get into that because I can be naive at times, no question about it. I know there's a lot of crime taking place in the city of St. Louis. And to me, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's great. We need people here, but maybe it's not just about crime because there is a difference between sending the National Guard in, sending these multi agency task force in versus the FBI coming here permanently. So we're going to talk about what's going on in St. Louis, what the rumors are, word on the street. It's gonna be surprising, and I think you're going to like it. We're going to talk about that. What else are we going to talk about? Talking about the National Guard, of course, deploying across the United States, growing threats against ICE, because as we know, ICE is ramping up. We knew that was going to happen in August, heading into September. That is absolutely going to happen. And we're going to talk a little bit about Donald Trump and the coup, because we all knew there was a coup against Donald Trump, didn't we? We knew, but and every day we see more validation, and I've seen some of the best validation I've had yet come out, this weekend. We're going to talk about that. Screwworm, my gosh, we can talk about that right away. Ghislaine Maxwell talking. We're seeing a little bit here and there, some of the things Maxwell's talking about openly, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, I don't know how openly you can talk from prison, but we're going to find out because there's a reason why she was moved to that prison in Texas, of course. And so we'll talk about that. Israel, we're going to jump into some stuff going on with Israel this morning. They're probably in a lot of trouble. Phyllis, I'm not sure if I saw your message. Linda, good morning. I think I did say that. Good morning, David. The NGA probably has a lot to do with it. Maybe, but maybe something else too. Maybe something else too. Karen, when my husband died, my next door neighbor would watch everything I did. So I kept calling the police and they said, get cameras. So I did. So he stopped. Yes, Karen, these days you really need cameras. And I wasn't even going to talk about this, but we will very quickly. Even if you're under no threat at all, even if you live in a very safe area, please do yourself a favor and put some cameras around your home. Cameras in the front, cameras in the back. Make sure you have a view of every single angle of your home and every entry point onto your property. Those are very important things, and not just because of situations like this. Trust me, I have sensors, I have trail cams, I have cameras. If anybody, I'm very lucky. The house that I have here used to belong to a very prominent attorney, and she handled family law. And of course, probably she didn't. She's never told me this, but I assume dealt with a lot of situations that could turn violent. And so she was very well protected here, which is one of the things I really liked about this house is the security systems in place. But I understand not everybody has a, security alarm or different types of systems in place. And it's time that you do that, not necessarily a house alarm, but think about this. With all of these additional multi-agency task force, the Washington Guard, the National Guard being deployed to all these different states across the country. Like here where I live in central Illinois, we're going to have deployments into Chicago. That's coming soon. Well, guess what happens? Those criminals don't just give up the life of crime now, do they? They don't give up the life of crime. They just move somewhere else. So, if you're sitting in an area and let's say outside of St. Louis, outside of Chicago, and you have these task force working in those areas to get rid of violent crime, well, those criminals are just going to find other places to go. They're not just going to say, oh, I guess we're done with crime now because all of these agencies are in our town arresting people. No, they're just going to find somewhere else to go, and that could be your neighborhood. And there's a lot of neighborhoods out there where people don't lock their doors, people don't lock their car doors, they don't shut their garage doors. It's kind of crazy to think about, and it's sad that we have to worry about those things, but you do. So if you're one of those people, you don't have cameras, you don't lock your doors, you don't lock your car up, you don't remove your valuables from your car, it's sad to say. I would be doing that if I were you, because these criminals are going to be leaving the big cities and they're going to be going out into the other communities. Now, eventually they will have nowhere else to go, but that's going to take some time. At some point, they will have nowhere else to go. But until that time, you really need to have your head on a swivel because they are already planning. Think about that. They're already planning, where will we go next? If we can't operate in the city of St. Louis or the city of Chicago, where will we go next? And again, that could be your community. Good morning, Robert. So keep that in mind. Lots to talk about today. You know, my mind's a little off. Like I said, I've been dealing with an issue this morning with someone who listens to the show, not anyone that comments or a name that you would ever recognize, but it's got me a little bit paranoid, just a little bit paranoid. So we were talking about the coup against Donald Trump. We all know, we've always known that there was a coup staged against Donald Trump. What was the goal? Of course, well, they didn't want him to run for president, right? And they hated Donald Trump for everything he did. More than anything, they hate him because he represents us, the people. Good morning, Michelle. He represents us, the people. And they hate Donald Trump for that because they hate us. They really do. They hate us. We are modern day slaves. But I was just reading a list yesterday of all the taxes. I'm not going to read them because there's too many. We are modern day slaves. And us rising up against that system is really not that different from what it was back then. We have the illusion of freedom, but it's just an illusion. So anytime we rise up against the system, of course, they're going to come back and tamp us back down. And with Donald Trump being our leader, the leader of the freedom of the true freedom that we should have in this country, of course they're going to come after him. And when he wouldn't just voluntarily step back, of course, what do? They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to imprison him. They tried to assassinate him. There was no length they weren't willing to go to, of course. And it's interesting to see all of that playing out. And people want to say, "Oh, this is lawfare. This is judicial warfare." Well, you know what? That's just a page out of the Democrat book, isn't it? But the situation with John Bolton, like I told you guys last week about John Bolton's house being raided, everybody's like, "Oh, that's just Trump, showing his strength and trying to come after people, and it's lawfare and judicial warfare." No, this was actually, like I said last week, under the Biden administration, they actually had planned to raid John Bolton's home looking for classified documents. So Biden put it off. Trump just reenacted that same order. So that was something that was from the past, not new. But there are a lot of new things going on. And one of the statements I read as we continue these investigations into the coup against Donald Trump, and that's what it was. It truly was a real coup because the Democrat Party is a regime. It is. It's a regime. And it's not just a political party. So I thought this was kind of interesting. Here's some testimony that came through. Now, this is by FBI General Counsel James Baker. You may have already heard this. This was in a sworn statement. He said, then acting Attorney General Rod Rosenstein was working with two individuals inside the Trump administration. Now, this was after Donald Trump fired James Comey, and they said they were secretly trying to record Donald Trump and invoke the 25th Amendment in an attempt to overthrow the United States government. Okay, well, that's treason right there. That is actual treason. You could say, well, do you believe James Baker? This is FBI General Counsel James Baker. This is a sworn testimony under oath. And he stated again, think about that they had people in the White House, people surrounding Donald Trump, trying to record him to catch him saying something so that they could, oust him from the presidential office and Democrat regime would take back over. I think things change when you start thinking about it as a regime and not just a political party, because it is actually a regime, very much like you'll see in other countries in which a regime has been under ruling power for many, many years. Now, the difference is in a lot of other countries where they have a regime, they don't have the same constitutional laws that we do. So they just allow the same person to be their leader for many, many years. Where here in the United States, it's the same party, it's the same regime, but we have this illusion of freedom where you think you're able to elect a new leader when in fact it's just that same regime selecting, which is where that term comes from selecting, not electing. They are selecting the next face to represent you. But our president, and I've said this so many times before outside of Donald Trump, has never really been a president. They're kind of like the Wendy's of Wendy. It's the face of the brand of the United States, is all the president generally is. Now, Donald Trump is a different story. And that's why they don't like him because he is absolutely acting, on the behalf of Americans, on the behalf of himself, unlike Democrat presidents and even some Republican presidents that were selected by the Democrat regime. And we know they did absolutely everything they could to get him out, everything they could. And I'm sure they're still trying to get him out because he's uncovering corruption at every corner, every single corner. And we're going to see a lot more of this corruption uncovered. I would really like to see all these conspirators of not just the Russia hoax, because it's so much bigger than just that Russia hoax. The Russia hoax, that was just one little part of a whole scheme, of course, to make sure Donald Trump was not our president, to stage that coup against the government, against the Trump administration. Russia part was just one little piece of that puzzle. So I really hope they come after these people. I hope these people end up being charged with treason. I hope they go to prison. I don't ever see it happening. I don't see it happening, but I hope that it does. I really do hope that it does. And so I want to touch base on that. I think we're going to see a lot more revelation coming through. We're hearing a lot more from Ghislaine Maxwell. Speaking of crazy cover-ups, I've heard a lot of different statements from her. One of those statements, of course, was that Donald Trump was never involved in any of these parties with Epstein. He was never involved. Yes, they knew him, but his name is not on the list of perpetrators. Now, he might be on a list that says that he knew Epstein, he knew Maxwell, that they were associates, lived social circles, that type of thing, but that he was not somebody who participated in any of these parties. He's not someone that was ever at Epstein Island. Now, of course, the detractors from that want to say, well, of course she's going to say that because she's hoping for a pardon, that if she completely clears Donald Trump and says his name was never there, then maybe she'll get that pardon. I don't think that's true. I really do think that Donald Trump knew them in social circles and it never went further than that. Now, you might hear some testimony that speaks otherwise, but even this Virginia, I know I'm not ever pronouncing her name right. Is it Giuffre? Virginia Giuffre? Well, she wrote a memoir, and that's going to be released very soon. And that is her own personal account of what happened to her. And I don't know why it hasn't already been released, if somebody blocked it, if she just wasn't ready. But upon her recent death, her memoir is going to be released. Now, you guys probably know this already, but we've talked about it here on the show. The strange twist of that is that Virginia Giuffre, used to work for Donald Trump. She worked for him at Mar-a-Lago, and she is one of the people that Epstein poached from Mar-a-Lago. And amongst other people too, she's not the only one. There were other women, other females that worked at Mar-a-Lago that Epstein came to know from his visits to Mar-a-Lago. And, he poached them. He hired them out from under Mar-a-Lago. And now, according to Donald Trump, that's why he banned Epstein from coming to Mar-a-Lago. And Virginia Giuffre apparently did say, when she was, of course, still alive, that Donald Trump never harmed her, never touched her, or any of the other women at Mar-a-Lago. But there's a lot of different statements coming out, from Maxwell. She is talking to some degree. She mentioned some names, not names that we don't already know. As a matter of fact, she talked about, of course, Prince Andrew and how he came into the mix. And she's talked about, trying to see, I don't think there was any names she mentioned. She doesn't believe that Epstein killed himself. No big surprise there. And she, of course, would know, right? She knew this man. She knew how he thought. She knew what he was capable of. So I think it's interesting that we have Patel and Bongino telling us that, yes, Epstein did, in fact, unalive himself. And then we have Maxwell saying that he would have never done that. I'm going to be very careful with my wording because it doesn't not take much for them to completely remove me for certain words, because they consider that, of course, violence, even though it's not violence. I don't know who Lady Rothschild is. I don't. I'm gonna have to look that up. But Maxwell said that Lady Rothschild, she's the person who introduced Prince Andrew to Epstein, and she was a philanthropist, and she was married, of course. She also introduced Alan Dershowitz and Bill Clinton to Epstein. So Lady Rothschild is a major figure here. I don't think that's any surprise, probably, to anyone else. But I'll be very curious to see what else Maxwell has to say. I'm sure it's probably a lot. And hopefully we'll at least hear those little tidbits as they come through. And so that's one thing I want to talk about. I was going to talk about Gavin Newsom because there's more and more information coming out about him every day. And the reason why is because, of course, he plans on running in 2028. But I'm like, we'll save that for another day. I feel like I've had enough talking about Newsom for the time being, but especially because there's so many other things to talk about. How about let's talk about J.D. Pritzker? That guy, of course, the governor of Illinois. Not surprising at all that he wants to give abortion pills to children without parental consent. I've got a little video clip of him here. I don't even want to look at him. And I hate it because he's like friends with some people in my community who think he's just this great guy and they're conservatives. I don't get it. But I'm going to play this video for you.
Today I was here at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign to sign two bills, very important ones. One is to protect the healthcare workers that are providing reproductive services to people from prosecution for doing completely legal things in the state of Illinois. So happy to do that. And then another bill that allows access on campus at campus pharmacies or student health centers to medication abortion or contraception when they need it. So students don't have to go searching perhaps in the town or the next county to try to find it. So very proud of that. We had many students here and activists. Indeed, these were bills that were proposed by students. So congratulations to them.
Oh my goodness. Seriously? Now, we hear about all of the political talk about what's going to happen in some of these other states, redistricting and everything is going on, but no one's really tackling Illinois to get rid of somebody like Pritzker. Because I'll tell you, someone like him, they're destroying our society. And I can't imagine giving abortion pills to children, and worse than that is they're getting ready to start in Illinois, the state of Illinois. If you have children in the school districts, public school districts in Illinois, they're getting ready to start this assessment. Now, I don't know when this is going to begin, if it's going to be with this fall, the following spring. I think they're planning it for fall. And they're going to give your children a very, very, very introspective assessment. And they're going to ask your child a lot of very personal questions. They want to know everything there is to know about your child, what they believe, what they feel, what their thoughts are about different controversial topics, how they feel about their own sexuality and this type of thing. I read some of the questions and I'll tell you they're very invasive, but this is something that's going to happen. And then what the state is going to decide to do for you the parent, is they're going to decide if your child needs therapy. They're going to decide if your child needs medication. Did your child answer questions to where they seem like they're depressed? Well, then guess what? The state is going to decide your child needs to take medication for depression. Did they answer the questions in a way to believe that your child is bipolar? Well, if that's the case, well, guess what? The state is going to make sure your child takes medication for being bipolar. If they think your child needs therapy, well, guess what? They're going to make sure your child is provided with therapy. They want to take over for the parent, is what it really comes down to. And it's kind of a scary thing to me. And I think it's such a bigger deal than what people are making it out to be. Of course, people want to say, oh, it's no big deal. These kind of questionnaires have been asked for kids for a long time, but no, and of course, yeah, there's school counselors who recommend therapy and different things already. We already know that happens. But this is a completely different situation. This is a situation where they're asking these extremely invasive questions for the sole purpose of managing your children's health. And that's absolutely not okay. It is absolutely not okay. It kind of reminds me of something you'd see in some dystopian society where the government takes it upon themselves to manage the children of the country, where they're making sure the children all follow a certain regimen, a certain line of thinking, to where if your child doesn't follow the line of thinking the government expects your child to follow, then clearly that child must need therapy or medication. It's a very dangerous situation. And I hope we hear more about it and learn more about it as it goes on. I hope parents in Illinois stand up and fight back, because this is something to me that is just a major violation. They have no business doing that. I understand, schools spend a lot of time with the children. They really do. The teachers, the school counselors, sometimes the school nurse, administrators, sometimes they do know children better than the parents do, because children tend to hide things, of course, from family members and parents, and they go to school. And some of these things are played out, within the school and the interaction with the other kids, the interaction with teachers. I understand a recommendation, I do. I remember when my son was in preschool, one of his preschool's teachers was like, I really recommend that you get better structure for your child. And I remember at the time thinking, what in the world is she talking about? And boy, do I wish sometimes I would have listened to her with that structure, because I'm a very unstructured person. So it's hard when you're the parent and you're unstructured, and then to structure, of course, a timeline for your kids. My timeline's kind of all over the place, being self-employed and so on. Good morning, Mary. But that's one thing to make a suggestion versus laying out the plan and forcing you to comply. I know a lot of people who would never allow their children to take certain types of medications because those medications, of course, can cause a lot of unwanted side effects. So I think if they continue to push this and they start prescribing these medications to children, of all ages without the parental consent or without the eh, parents being the person, of course, who steps up and wants this medication or therapy for their kids, I think it's going to be a real problem. And I think it's a very slippery slope where we go in the future when it comes to education. What does education have anything to do with your child's behavioral assessment or their mental health assessment and forcing them? That's where it breaks down the line, forcing them to either get therapy or take medication. It's a big problem in my mind. So, of course, the state of Illinois, the one state we should really be doing our best to get the right people in place. Not a whole lot of attention being paid to the state of Illinois, but lots of other places are. There's red states: Florida, Ohio, Missouri, Indiana, all working on redrawing their maps, or at least considering redrawing the maps, doing some gerrymandering, trying to move things around for 2028. Everybody's getting ready for 2028 because it's going to be a battle like we have never seen before between Democrats and Republicans. They want to, of course, get back to their 30-year agenda. They can't do that with us standing in the way. So, of course, we have Gavin Newsom with his extra 5 seats he's throwing in, Texas taking away 5, these other states thinking, well, what can we do? How do we jump in the mix? How do we make sure that our states remain red? And how do we create more seats so we can fight the extra seats some of these other Democrat states are taking? But they're again, if you look at the map, I was just telling somebody this the other day. I can't recall why, but and speaking of that, just like the Cracker Barrel video I played at the beginning of the show, I'll play that again at the end of the show. Hopefully I'll remember. But I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I'm like, people just don't get it. Democrats don't get it. They are the minority. They are not the majority. We are the majority. They are the minority. They're very good at making us feel like we're the minority, but we are actually the majority. If you look at any map, it is almost 100% red, except for a couple little blue dots in these sanctuary cities. That's pretty much it. And those people are turning at a very rapid rate. I just read the other day, and I didn't really get into the article, but I read that in the state of California, there are no more rental vans, U-Haul trucks, and so on to leave the state. There are so many people have left the state of California that they don't have any more U-Haul trucks. And so they're giving people discounts. And if you bring a U-Haul truck or that type of truck into California one way, then they're going to reduce your rate. Sometimes they said, I've heard by like 50 or 60% because they want you to leave that truck in the state of California. People are tired of it. They're tired of it. California, Illinois just barely slipped under and remained a blue state. But there's a lot of predictability there that both Illinois and California could someday turn red. And if Gavin Newsom is the best they can do, I can definitely see that happen. There's a lot of people who, even Democrats who don't like Gavin Newsom. So, and then here in Illinois, I think it was, I always forget one was, I'm going to look that up so I don't keep forgetting. But one state, California or Illinois, I think it was California where it was only 11% of the vote kept it a blue state. And I think it was Illinois, it was only 4% of the vote that kept it a blue state. I'm pretty sure that was the statistics. So it's very, very close. And now, of course, we're pushing things forward because we know what the illegal vote does in our country. Of course, we already talked about last week, Donald Trump getting rid of mail-in ballots. That's going to make a big difference going forward for voting. Illegals is a huge impact when it comes to our vote because I've been talking about this for years, and I used to argue with different co-hosts of mine because they said it wasn't true, where there is a federal only ballot in some states. Some states have a federal only ballot, and if you're not a legal resident of the United States, you can vote in federal elections using one of these federal only ballots. And we would fight and fight and fight because they told me that it just wasn't true, that there's no such thing, but there is. Now, according to our Constitution, of course, if the margin is within that 250,000 votes that pushes it over, they're not supposed to count any more than 250,000 of those federal only ballots. But if the federal only ballots pushes the election one direction or the other, then they're supposed to take those federal ballots out because they're not supposed to. I don't even know why they give people the chance to vote, quite honestly, if it doesn't really count. But if it pushes it over a certain percentage, they're supposed to take those votes out. It's not supposed to determine a race, but they've not been taking them out. We saw that happen in Arizona. That's going to be different in 2028. Donald Trump is going to make sure our elections are secured. And one of the ways, of course, he's doing that is tackling illegal immigration. We talked about that many times. Of course, all the voters coming in. A lot of those people, though, believe it or not, who are here illegally actually do vote for Donald Trump. Not all of them, but Democrats certainly count on them for their votes to keep their people in and tell the people, of course, if you want to continue to get your benefits, if you want to continue to live in this country, you have to vote Democrat. It doesn't matter really where your heart is. If you don't vote in the right direction, you're going to go. So last count, official count I heard was 1.6 million illegals we've already deported. And of course, that number is stepping up rapidly. It's already a lot higher than that. I heard the other day that it's over 2 million now. Now, I don't know if that's true. I haven't been able to confirm it, but that is what I've heard. Now, the next phase is already taking place. And that is that we have 1,700 National Guard troops being deployed around the country to assist with ICE. Now, some people are saying that when ICE was deployed to Los Angeles and as it to allegedly combat the violence that was taking place during these protests, they said the real reason they were really there was to assist ICE. Now, I don't know if that's true or not true, but that's what a lot of people are talking about. Now, what I do know is 1,700, think about that, 1,700 ICE or National Guard troops all do being, good morning, Kevin, being deployed all across the United States. And, people are going to be absolutely freaking out. Absolutely freaking out. And I did see, as a matter of fact, I have a little video here that the Washington Guard now in DC are armed. That's something that doesn't normally happen, but they are armed. And we know they were deputized. We know that they can now take further action to what their typical National Guard role is, which is usually just a deterrent or protecting federal buildings. So take a look at this little video clip here.
You want a picture? I can take a picture with you. No, you want a picture?
Of course, residents in DC coming out of their homes, I heard, thanking police, thanking the National Guard. I saw a very brief video clip the other day. National Guard coming down the street, people coming out of their homes, thanking them profusely for them having a safer place to live, that they can now shop without worrying about getting robbed or carjacked. They can sit at red lights and have their windows down. They can take walks and down the street, things they couldn't do before. And Dottie says, unarmed leaves the National Guard so vulnerable. It does. And Dottie, sometimes they even just arm them with rubber bullets and not real bullets. And it is a kind of a scary situation. And I think that the Trump administration worries so much, of course, about something happening in the National Guard getting involved and then the implications of them, let's say, shooting someone or that's they're not trained to do certain things. Some, of course, National Guardmen were military. A lot of them have been overseas. A lot of them have been in combat, and a lot of them have not. So there's a lot of different things going on there. But I trust them. I trust their capabilities 100%. And we're going to see again 1,700 National Guard. They're going to be in several different states here. I've got a whole list here. 19 different states. Some of them being Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Virginia. They are going to see a presence of National Guard troops coming in and assisting with ICE deportations. And I know I just read, you guys probably did too, that, oh gosh, what's that? That Garcia. I just read the guy's name. I'm sure one of you guys will remind me. Garcia, is it Embrego? He is in, I believe it's Boston. Do I have that right? I just read a little bit about it this morning. That's that case where, of course, everybody was fighting for him to come back. They shipped him off. They said, oh, he doesn't belong here. He's never been here before. I think it was El Salvador. Brought him back. Well, now he's on his way to Uganda. He turned himself in today, and now he is gone. And he was under investigation and implicated potentially in a homicide here in our country, illegally trafficking in some other different things. But of course, Democrats fought really hard to say that he was, of course, innocent. Of course, he was innocent. And that's how those things go. And so we'll see how things work out. But I really want to talk today about St. Louis. That's something very important I think we need to discuss. As we know, the FBI is ramping up. I've not heard any number of agents coming to St. Louis, but I heard it's the largest deployment of FBI agents anywhere in the country. And they're not just coming to St. Louis for a short time. Some of these people are going to be here permanently. Now, of course, we're led to believe that they're coming here to assist with violent crime. And of course, they are certainly going to do that. We know that under Donald Trump's last term, that he had all of these multi-agency task force that were put together to fight violent crime, particularly in the city of St. Louis. We've talked about that a lot, since that time. But this is a little bit different. This is a little different. Yes, some of those FBI agents absolutely will be here to investigate and fight violent crime. But think about the difference between St. Louis City and, let's say, Washington, D.C., Chicago next on the list. Now when they roll out going to Chicago, it's going to be the National Guard, it's going to be the FBI, it's going to be the U.S. Marshal Service. U.S. Marshal Service, of course, heading the operation in Washington, D.C., and will likely head the operation in Chicago. But that's different than what's happening in St. Louis. In St. Louis, it's FBI. It's not U.S. Marshal Service. It's not the National Guard. It's the FBI. Well, what does the FBI do? The FBI investigates, don't they? They conduct investigations. And often they conduct investigations against high-level people. And I hear, oh, Abrego, thank you so much, Mary. Sometimes I wonder where my mind is because I just read the story this morning and I was really rushing today. So I didn't take any notes. I'm just like, oh, we're just going to talk on memory like we do most days. And in St. Louis City, things are going to be a very different situation. I'm hearing, now I cannot confirm this for you, so take it with a grain of salt. This can go a lot of different ways, but I heard it from someone who I trust and who I believe knows the truth based on who this person knows, and I believe this to be true. I am hearing that the reason why the FBI is coming to St. Louis is because of corruption in the city of St. Louis government. And I think, now this is just me guessing, this person didn't tell me this part of things. I was told that they were coming here to investigate the St. Louis city government run under Tashora Jones. That we had what, 180, was it $180 million, $280 million in Rams settlement funds that were given to the city of St. Louis. And they want to investigate, where did that money go? Because the money allegedly is gone. Again, I cannot confirm this. I'm just telling you hearsay. Somebody I trust, somebody I know is in the know, told me this. And I believe it to be true that the FBI is here partially to invest the government in St. Louis. You hear about corruption in small towns. We've all known, I think, that the St. Louis City government has been extremely corrupt. We've heard the stories about Corey Bush under investigation. We know that those Ram settlement funds, where did they go? I think, now this is the part that I'm just going to guess, is I think that what happened is Kara Spencer came into the role of St. Louis mayor. We had that tornado that came through in May. And at that time, Kara Spencer said, hey, we're going to allot, I think it was $30 million of that Ram settlement. We're going to allot that money to victims of the tornado, to rebuilding our city. Well, then something happened, and no one really seems to know what it is, where they were not able to use that money. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to, because we, have this RAM settlement money that we need to be using on different things, and we don't have access to that money, we're going to have to cancel. Remember, we talked about this. We're going to have to cancel these programs that are DEI initiatives that are supposed to give minorities, including women, these different contracts. We're not going to be able to do that. And somehow they would tie that back to that RAMS money. Now, all of a sudden, people in the city of St. Louis are saying, hey, Kara Spencer, you said that the St. Louis city was going to get some of this RAMS money to help rebuild, but we're not seeing any of that happen. Now, I've never seen Kara Spencer address that, but what I am seeing is she's jumping through every loophole to be on the side of the feds to make sure that she gets federal funding to rebuild St. Louis from that tornado damage. And that is why, of course, she canceled those DEI programs, because she has said very publicly that she canceled those programs because she wants to abide by this administration, because she needs that funding to rebuild after the tornadoes. So then you've got to ask, where is that money at? Where is the RAMS money? I think, and I'm told, that it's gone, that under Tashora Jones, that money was spent. It was reallocated. Nobody seems to know where it went. Was it pocketed? Was it paid to various contractors that supplied kickbacks? I'm just guessing here. And Mary says, has ICE arrested any illegal grass cutters, carpet installers, etc. in Missouri? I don't, Mary, I don't know. Pam says money was supposedly invested in North City to develop businesses. We knew this was complete BS right away. Yes, it was. And like Dottie says, it's on my desk. And yes, we did know too. Yeah, $280 million when the Rams relocated to St. Louis. I heard from a source that the money's gone. It's all gone. There's nothing left. And there's nowhere we don't know where it went. And what we do know where it went to some questionable sources and potentially kickbacks. And I am told, I'm trying to be so careful saying this because I don't want it to be revealed who told me this or how that person came to know this. And I also don't want to set off any rumors that are going to cause people to go and hide things and get ahead of a potential investigation. So I'm trying to be very careful in what I say. But is it possible that the FBI is going to be in St. Louis investigating where that $280 million went? Because we know, look at Cori Bush. I mean, Cori Bush is being investigated. She gave her boyfriend X number of dollars, millions of dollars, for security, for protection. Never should have happened. And then the government, if unaccounted for, if you're not watching what they do, there's a very easy opportunity for them to do exactly this, to embezzle money. And I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm not saying it did happen. That's what I'm heard. That's the rumor on the street, is that the reason the FBI is going to be here in St. Louis is because they want to know, hey, where's that RAM settlement money? It's gone. Where did it go? Let's look into it. And I heard it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of agents to go and backtrack through all of that. I absolutely do believe that the city of St. Louis government has been corrupt for a very long time, not just under Tashora Jones, but for a very long time. And I hope that the FBI is here to uncover all of the wrongdoings, because it would be really nice if we could get St. Louis City back up and running like the amazing city it once was. It was at one time an absolutely amazing city. Mary says Jones probably hired family and friends for different stuff. I'm guessing so, Mary. Like I said, I'm trying to be very careful how I phrase things and what I talk about. I don't want to get myself in trouble. I don't want to get my friend in trouble. And I talked to enough people. Hopefully nobody would narrow it down to this particular person. However, I do believe this is true. I believe this person heard things through the proper channels. And think about that. When you think about St. Louis City, is now we have our two prior Missouri attorney generals in Washington, D.C., working with the Trump administration. Of course, that being Eric Schmidt, our Missouri attorney general, and then his replacement, Andrew Bailey, who stepped up into that role, also now heading out to Washington, D.C. to work with who? The FBI. I absolutely think these two people, Eric Schmidt and Andrew Bailey, are absolutely pivotal, because that as Missouri Attorney General, they knew everything that was going on within the state of Missouri. They knew everything that was going on within the city of St. Louis, but yet to some degree, their hands were tied. The only thing they could do would be to ask the FBI to investigate. But the FBI, being ran under Comey or Ray or some of these other people, they were never going to do that. They were never going to do that. And so now we're playing a different ball game, aren't we? So we'll see what happened to that Rams money. Is there any left? I I hear not, and on a personal level, I highly doubt it. So we'll see how all that works out. But I do expect that we are going to have these investigations. I do expect there are going to be arrests in the city of St. Louis of some very key government officials. And I do expect that there's going to be uprising because of that. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all that all of these agents coming into the St. Louis area are part of the investigation, part of quelling any type of unrest that occurs after the investigation. But again, like so many other things, all we can do is wait and see. But I see it happening. I think we're going down the right path there with that. And some of the other things I want to talk about is, of course, as ICE comes in, as the FBI comes in, there's a lot of threats being faced. I don't have the video for you today. I was going to play it the other day and didn't, but there's a group of Marines who are in Texas who said, "Hey, if a part of Texas is if ICE comes to our town, we're going to stand up against them." Now, these are United States former Marines or veterans, but they're also Hispanic veterans. I don't know if that makes any difference with any of this, because I know a lot of Hispanic veterans who are absolutely 100% behind ICE. But this group of guys are saying, "Hey, if they come here to our town, we're going to stand up, we're going to fight back." And I'm hearing more and more of that, of people saying they're going to stand up and fight back. And Pam says, "I will be excited for the FBI coming into the loo and grab up all the rats. How do they sleep at night?" I'm thinking they're probably not sleeping that well right now, because I think there's a lot of people in St. Louis who are very worried about these investigations. And of course, with Kara Spencer in office, I think Kara Spencer, no question about it, is a socialist, but she's a lot better and going to do better for the city of St. Louis than Tashora Jones ever did. I don't think Kara Spencer will ever steal money or embezzle money or get kickbacks from things. I don't I may not like her politics, but I don't think she's a bad person. Now, Tashara Jones, she seems like a nice enough person. I've met her before. I've met all these people, as a matter of fact, in the past I used to talk about all the time. I've met them all. I've not met Cori Bush. I've met all the other ones. And when you're talking to them, of course, they're very nice people. But the way they run the government is a whole different story. And Jones, of course, her dad being Vervis Jones, and also tied to a lot of different things that have gone on with the city of St. Louis, it all comes full circle. And I think we're going to see a lot of this play out. We're going to learn a lot more as we go. And I'm very excited about that, because my grandparents moved to the city of St. Louis. I don't know. I think it was maybe back in the 50s, maybe 1950 something. And they love the city of St. Louis. I still have a lot of family members who live in the city. And, there was a street in, I'm not going to say which street, but there was a street in the city of St. Louis where my great grandmother moved and then her daughters moved. They all lived in a house on that same street. So at one point, my whole family lived there, and my cousins and some other people still live in those same houses. So I lived in Chicago, but we would come back and we would visit St. Louis. And it's also so very near and dear to my heart. I lived in the city for a long time. My brother lived in the city a very long time, and I was always going back and forth. And I saw the change in St. Louis City from this beautiful place it once was when I was a kid to absolutely crime-ridden gangs and drugs and all of this other stuff, homicides, gunfire every night. I would really like to see the city cleaned up. And if you think about it, Donald Trump, they're going to Chicago next. They're doing a fantastic job in Washington, DC. I've heard there's about 4,000 National Guard troops there now. And next, they're going to be heading to Chicago. Chicago's the next city on their agenda. And of course, the mayor, Brandon Johnson, is saying, well, if you come here to Chicago, guess what? You're going to have quite a fight on your hands, because we're not going to put up with it. Well, I have a feeling he'll be going to prison is probably what's going to happen, because yes, they are coming to Chicago. Yes, they are going to clean up the city of Chicago as it needs to be. Another city I went as a child and never felt unsafe. Now there's a lot of parts of Chicago that are still very safe, where you can go and hang out and not really worry about crime. But unlike St. Louis, where I feel like every part of St. Louis City, you have to have some degree of caution and worry. There are parts of Chicago still that are, pretty darn safe, but then the bad parts are really bad. So I'm glad that they're going in and tackling that crime in the city of Chicago. But again, that makes the criminals filter out to all of the surrounding areas. We started out the show talking about that we've got to be prepared for that also. But eventually, if we continue to tackle crime city by city, crime and corruption city by city, well, then guess what? Eventually, these people are going to have nowhere to go. And eventually, they're going to be responsible for their own demise. They're either going to end up in prison or they're going to quit their life of crime and corruption. And if they don't, guess what? Under the Trump administration, they will have nowhere to hide. So I think there's a lot of good things coming, absolutely. And I love to see special attention being paid to the city of Chicago and of course the city of St. Louis. Pam says, I can't wait to see Chicago get help as well as St. Louis. We are desperate here also. No question about it. No question about it. But you know what? It's not going to be an easy road. Not for us and definitely not for law enforcement. I'm going to play a video for you. This is a guy in the state of Washington talking about people who are homeless on the streets because they know that some of these areas in Washington are on the agenda. Seattle, of course, we've got Portland, Oregon, in that same general area. So listen to what this guy has to say, and you'll see exactly what a dangerous situation this is for ICE agents, for National Guard, for police officers.
What's up, TikTok? Looks like I was talking with the homeless people out here. They're getting ready tonight, man. So right over here is where they're all at. Chilling right over here by the transit center, and so yeah, they're chilling right there. And ain't nobody fucking with them. They're ready tonight, man. They got baseball bats, knives. Some of them are armed actually. So like, if ICE comes in here, man, the one dude I was talking with, he said if they come and try to fuck with him, he's already gonna shoot. He don't care. He has nothing to lose at this point, is what he told me. He goes, God forbid if they come in here and mess with me, we're gonna be crashing out right here. That's where he said, right behind me. And he said if they come and fuck with us tonight, he goes, man, he showed me his pistol, and he goes, man, they ain't gonna like that, man, because I'm gonna shoot and ask questions first, is what he said, and that's what's going on. So people are hearing what's going on, and they're getting, so like these homeless people, they're armed right here, man. They got baseball bats, knives, and
that's a longer video, but we'll stop it there. I think he meant they'll shoot and ask questions later. He said they're going to shoot and ask questions first. I think he means later. But we've got to do these things. I always say we're just a step behind Europe. I want to show you this video. This is what little girls are doing over in different parts of Europe. They are terrified. They have to carry weapons because they're so worried about being attacked by migrants. If we don't get ahead of the situation here in the United States, we're not going to be very far behind. I feel so bad for you.
Yes, you have a knife.
You don't. Hey, I'm fucking perfect. You're fucking bad and
Why you fucking with us?
These are fucking cat bashers.
Show the knife. Show the knife.
Get
Show
the
the knife.
fuck away from us.
Show the knife. Show the knife.
Don't touch her.
That's
Touch
it,
me.
that's
You're
it. Show the
whoever you
knife.
want to be. Get my love star.
Okay, so that little girl, as you saw, had a very big knife and an axe. They were being pestered by various migrants and felt that they needed to show their weapons to protect themselves. That's a very dangerous situation. A very dangerous situation. And I don't think these little girls understand that is definitely not the best course of action, because what will probably happen is they'll probably get overpowered, and one of these migrants is going to take that axe and they're going to take that knife and use it against them. But it's really sad to think that, over in parts of Europe, you have these young kids who feel like they have to have these weapons for their own safety. Women not even able to go out after dark. And it's even crazier that the governments tell the women, kind of tell them it's on you. Hey, if you don't want to be assaulted by these migrants, just don't go out after dark. It's really that easy. It's insane what's happening in Europe right now. Absolutely insane. And I don't want to see that happen here. I don't want us to have those same fears. As a female, I don't want to feel like I can't go outside after dark because I'm worried about crime or illegals attacking me. So we've got to stop it now. We've got to stop it now. It's not going to be easy, but we have to stop it now before it gets worse. And it's probably going to get a whole lot worse if Donald Trump is not able to go into these cities and start eradicating criminals and illegals who are or have a criminal history. So all very important. Yeah, I know, Dottie, the accent. I know, and I hate it for those girls that they have to deal with that. The stuff that's going on in Europe is just crazy. I was just reading a story this morning about Australia, and we talk about how bad things are here in the United States when it comes to taxes and interest rates and everything else. I read over there that in Australia, they're trying to get citizens to allow migrants to move into their home. So if they have an unused bedroom, that if they don't allow someone to occupy that bedroom, then they're going to get a special tax on an unused bedroom because they don't want any room in your home to be unused. They want you to take people in if you have that extra bedroom. And it is the most absurd thing I think I've heard in a really long time. That would not go over well here at all. But here in the United States, things are pretty crazy too. I was just reading a story the other day about a guy, I can't recall where this guy, somewhere in New Hampshire, and he's for his entire life, he's been canning. I don't know if you guys saw this story or not, but he's been canning from his own garden his entire life. His mother before him had a nice garden, did all the canning, and now he has taken up the same hobby. He's got this beautiful garden. He cans preserves and vegetables and different things. And, this guy gives it all away. He cans it and he gives it away to the needy in his neighborhood. And now the government is telling him, you cannot do this. If you're going to be giving away this canned food, then you need to have an approved kitchen. You need to have all your stainless appliances. You need to have a business certificate, licensing, everything. And I'm like, okay, this guy is taking his own time. He's growing these vegetables in his own yard. He's canning them. He's not charging anyone. He's giving the food to people in need. But the state of New Hampshire says no, you can't do this. You cannot give that food to people because you first have to have a business license. You have to have a commercial kitchen. I mean, that's insane. People have given me all kinds of canned goods over the years, from preserves, to pie fillings, to various vegetables or salsas and different things. It's one of the craziest things I've heard. And just another way that here in the United States, we think we're free, but maybe not quite as free as we would like to believe. That's for sure. We'll talk a little bit more about some of these things, of course, tomorrow and as the day goes on. The only other couple things I want to talk about, if you're keeping track, Dottie says, "Live free or die" is long gone. Yeah, we're not living too free these days, are we? It's the illusion of freedom. We all feel the illusion of freedom, but how free are we really when every single thing we do, everything we own is taxed? And if you don't pay tax or you don't abide by the bazillion regulations you might have in your community, then guess what? You're going to be fined or you're going to go to jail, one or the other. So good luck with that. Not much freedom here, is there? But it's the illusion of freedom, of course. Well, I wanted to talk about uh, the screwworm, of course, coming through the United States. I don't even like to talk about these things, but it was a big news story this morning where we have the first case of screwworm here in the United States infecting a person. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to get into the details, but this is a nasty little disease. The screwworm situation coming up from Mexico, it's a very bad situation. It's really bad for livestock, but now allegedly we have the first human transmission of screwworm. And the reason why that terrifies me, if you go out and you look and you see what screwworm does to livestock, what it can do to the human body, it to me, it's something like straight out of a horror movie. And it's absolutely terrifying. I don't expect the government to turn that around on us, but you never know. I did hear, though, on the flip side of that, that Trump, RFK Jr. are going to completely eliminate and ban the COVID V. Gotta be careful what I say there. Whether that's going to happen, I don't know, but that's what they're saying. That at some point they're going to completely ban it. It will no longer be available. It will no longer be used. It will no longer harm another person. So I was glad to hear about that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we head out, just because this is going to be a bigger news story, you're going to hear about for sure over the coming days and weeks. And I am going to spare you the video. I've got the video. I will probably, maybe I'll share it on my Telegram channel, because I do believe, just because I don't want to show it, I'll get in trouble showing it here, for you to see, because it's very violent, that you don't have the ability to see it all. You could probably find it out there. The situation is as we know, Israel has a plan to completely wipe out Gaza. We already know that. They've already taken those steps. They're already in Gaza. They're already sweeping through the streets. That's been happening for a couple days now. I just read where they uprooted, I think it was like 70 something olive trees, which has a lot of people very upset. The 21 countries have determined that the people who live, the Palestinians who live in the Gaza region, are in fact in a famine, many people starving, some having already starved to death, many more starving and in a very critical state because aid is not allowed in. Now, something that's being shown this morning in various news sources, you may or may not see it on your mainstream news, depending on who controls that mainstream news, is that Israel is bombarding the Gaza region, not only on the ground, but with aerial assaults. And what happened today, or I should say over the weekend, is that there were a bomb that hit a residential building, and an emergency crew came through and they were rescuing people. Well, cameras, of course, were outside, and the people inside were yelling back at the IDF, and they were sticking up their middle finger at them and yelling at them, and while they're rescuing these people. Well, then a second strike hits exactly where those rescuers were once standing. And then, of course, as the smoke clears, you can see that they were all killed, of course, in that airstrike. And it's a really horrific video to watch. And I know it's going to be big on some various news channels today, probably the next couple of days. The UN already speaking out about it, saying it's a war crime. We'll see how it all plays out in if any action is taken. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've been seeing all these posts. You probably have too, where we have a large number of Palestinian people coming to the St. Louis area. Now, I haven't gotten the full word yet exactly where they're coming from. Some of you may know before I do, but they're coming to the St. Louis area a lot like how there was that area just south of the Arch in St. Louis City, where all of those folks back, remember when we withdrew from Afghanistan, all those people swarmed the gates, they jumped over the fences, went onto the planes, were not supposed to be there, and the planes had to hurry up and take off. They didn't have any time to play around. They ended up going to DC. These people were detained for about a week. They were never vetted, nothing like that. A good portion of them, thousands, I heard up to maybe 20,000, were relocated to the St. Louis area, just south of the Arch, where they have been establishing their own Afghan community. Now, I'm hearing the same thing is happening with some Palestinians. Now, the Palestinians, I believe, were already here in the country. I do not think these are Palestinians that you can't escape from Gaza. There is no way to escape. You're not allowed to cross the border into Egypt. You're not allowed to leave by sea. Obviously, you can't come through, the Israeli channel either. But there was a time when there were some Palestinians who also held a US passport or some type of US credentials, and they were allowed to leave. So I'm guessing that it's those people that are coming here. But a lot of people in St. Louis, they don't want them here. They do not want these people here in the St. Louis because, of course, they feel they're just going to add to some of the growing concerns about radicalism throughout the area. Now, again, I don't know exactly where these people came from. I believe that they are the people who already had some type of dual citizenship here in the United States and were able to evacuate and are now going to be stationed, setting up homesteads here in the St. Louis area. But either way, I think we're going to hear a lot coming out in the next couple days about what's happening over in Gaza. And I know none of us want to see Hamas flourish, that's for sure. And I even watched the video this morning. I was going to play it, and I was kind of questionable about Donald Trump talking out, saying that here in the United States, children worship athletes and, different types of people. So they want to grow up to be athletes. Whereas in a place like Gaza, the children worship Hamas leaders. So therefore, they grow up wishing to be Hamas, wanting to follow in the footsteps of Hamas. And, given reason why Israel should go into Gaza, why they should take over the streets, why they should, go in and raise a lot of these areas where they believe that Hamas is hiding. So a lot of people on both sides of that fence. But what I saw today in that video was pretty horrific. I don't think any one of us want to see videos, and I don't care what side of the fence you're on, whether it's Israel, whether it's Russia, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's United States, I don't think it matters. When you see civilians standing there and you see a bomb drop directly on them, you see them attacked to that degree, you've got to think, okay, this situation, this is not right. This should not be happening. And I certainly support Israel. I absolutely do support the right of Israel to exist. Certainly support the Israeli people. Our government leaders, I'm not always such a fan of, no matter what country it is. Not a big fan of war, of bloodshed, and all of the innocent people killed in war, because we're all just pawns. It's them today, but you know what? It could be us next. Never think it won't be you next. That's how I always think about it. But guys, that's about it for today. Like I said, I'm having kind of a crazy day. I got some weird messages this morning from someone. I kind of addressed it a little bit at the beginning of the show, right before I was getting ready to turn things on, and someone talking about visiting with me. And like I said, do not come to my home. That would never turn out well for anyone. Not a good situation unless, of course, you're invited. It kind of threw me off today to see these messages, and I've seen this person popping up throughout some of my social media recently, and of course, that always kind of raises a red flag to me when somebody kind of comes out of nowhere and then all of a sudden they're everywhere, and then sending me messages that were a little odd, to say the least. But either way, hopefully I haven't been too often distracted today. My mind is definitely somewhere else right now, having dealt with some very serious stalking situations in my past. It really worries me. And but we'll deal with it. We'll see how it all works out, won't we? But either way, guys, I'm going to play that Cracker Barrel video again because I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. I love finding these little videos. If you ever see any of these, definitely send them to me because I love playing them. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I hope you guys all have a really good day. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll be a little bit more present, have some presence of mind instead of being so distracted. But I do hope you guys have a good day, and I will look forward to talking to you then.
Calvin Klein said being morbidly obese was cool. Then Nike used a man in leggings to sell women's clothes. They must think we're fools. Go woke, go broke. That's what they say. Try selling folks what they don't want. You'll find there's hell to pay. If you ask me, you should keep your politics to yourself, and we'll both have a better day. Greedy banks lecturing me about DEI, are they for real? And some whack jobs named Ben and Jerry want me to boycott Israel. It's enough to make you reach for a beer, but Bud's woke too. Next they'll call it the queen of beers. Guess this Bud ain't for you. Go woke, go broke. Different company, different day. Sell liberal insanity, and you'll see that business plan don't pay. Best Foods don't want your opinions on Trump. Just want mayo for my sandwich, that okay? Why, oh, why do brands insist on committing suicide? Cracker Barrel, you could left me on the logo and just let it ride. Hey, Wall Street, God, politics, and sex ain't your business. So do me a favor and stay the heck out of mine. Go woke, go broke. That's what they say.